The Galactic Observation Corps had a rule, a very simple rule, a rule that every single intelligence officer, scout, diplomat, and field agent was briefed on before setting one tentacle, claw, or bioengineered appendage anywhere near a human-occupied territory. Do not touch their stuff. But Vorn, Field Agent Vorn Ultesh of the Krethian Empire, had apparently skipped that briefing, or slept through it, or eaten it. Given that Krethians consumed information via direct neural paper ingestion, the second option was unfortunately quite plausible. And now, standing in the middle of Office Block 7 of the new Ottawa Administrative Complex, surrounded by 47 humans who had absolutely no idea an invisible alien was crouched behind a desk, Vorn was making what historians would later describe as the single dumbest decision in the recorded history of Krethian intelligence operations. He was reaching for a pen, not a data core, not classified military blueprints, not the access keycard to a secured server. A pen, one of those thin, ink-filled cylinders that humans use to scratch marks onto processed tree pulp. The thing cost approximately 0.3 of the smallest Krethian currency unit. It had a little flower pattern printed on it. The flower was pink. Vorn told himself it was for scientific purposes. Vorn was lying to himself. The truth was that Krethian field agents were assessed, promoted, and celebrated based on artifact collection. And the assessors back on the home fleet had seen approximately 9,000 photographs of human technology, human weaponry, human food, human architecture, and human transportation systems, but not one of them had ever seen a human writing instrument up close. The cultural significance, his supervisor Grath had said with 8 eyes gleaming, could be immeasurable. Right, cultural significance of a flower pen. The desk it sat on belonged to a woman named Mara Osei. She was 31 years old. She had short hair, the kind that curled up at the ends like it had somewhere better to be. She wore a yellow cardigan over a white shirt and had a small potted cactus named Fernando sitting beside her monitor. Vorn had observed her for 3 standard rotations now and had catalogued her habits with the precision of a trained intelligence operative. She arrived every morning at exactly 8:47 a.m., not 8:45, which was her official start time, because she stopped at a small cart near the building entrance to buy something called a double-shot oat latte, with vanilla and a pump of hazelnut, please. And can you add cinnamon on top? Actually, not too much cinnamon. Actually, yeah, a normal amount is fine. It took the cart operator 12 seconds to process this order every single day. Every single day. Like it was somehow different each time. She sat down, opened her computer, looked at her emails, made a face like she had just witnessed something her mind refused to fully accept, and then turned to her pen cup and selected the appropriate writing instrument for whatever she was about to do. Color-coded, Vorn had noted. Red for urgent, black for notes, blue for forms, and the pink flower pen for personal to-do lists. She was currently 3 desks away, engaged in what the humans called a team meeting. 4 of them were standing around a table, one of them holding a printed document and gesturing at it with enough enthusiasm that it suggested the document had personally wronged him. Mara was nodding. The nod had the precise energy of someone who was absolutely not listening. This was the window. This was the moment. Vorn extended his manipulation field, carefully, gently, with the delicacy of someone who had spent 14 years in covert acquisition. The pen lifted, barely a centimeter. Barely a centimeter. He had the field calibrated to prevent any sound, any vibration, any disturbance to the surrounding air that might alert a nearby human. The pen rose 2 centimeters, 3, and then Mara Osei turned around. Not slowly, not with the casual glance of someone who had maybe heard something. She turned around like she had been watching the whole time, like she had been waiting, like she had known, and the moment her eyes snapped to that floating pen, she crossed the 3 desks between her and her workstation in approximately 1.4 seconds and delivered a kick to the side of Vorn's cloaking device that was, scientifically speaking, the most precisely aimed strike any Krethian field agent had ever received from a species they had assessed as moderately dangerous, at close range, low threat in structured environments. The kick connected with the emitter housing on his left hip. The cloak shattered. All 17 visible wavelengths of light suddenly revealed Vorn Ultesh, field agent, 7 years decorated service, 4 confirmed artifact recoveries, standing in the middle of a human office building holding a pink flower pen, staring at a woman in a yellow cardigan who was staring right back at him. The office went completely silent. Fernando the cactus did not react. Fernando had seen things. That, Mara said, pointing at the pen, is mine. Vorn, to his credit, did not run, partly because his training said running would escalate, mostly because his legs had stopped receiving instructions from his brain, which was currently too busy screaming to handle motor functions. He began. You what? She said. The humans at the meeting table were doing various things. One had knocked over the printed document. One had taken out a phone. One was gripping the table with both hands like the floor might stop being the floor at any moment. The fourth one, a tall man with glasses named Kwiku, had somehow already recorded a 45-second video and sent it to 6 separate group chats. Vorn tried again, in his best human approximating vocal output, which his translation collar handled, but which still came out with a faint harmonic resonance that made the nearby water cooler vibrate slightly, on official observational assignment. Observational, Mara repeated. Yes, you were observing my pen. Pause. The cultural and technological significance of human writing instruments has not been sufficiently documented by current galactic archives, Vorn said. He was aware, even as the words were coming out, that this was not helping. Mara reached over and took the pen from his manipulation field with 2 fingers, the way someone picks up something that does not belong to a 7-limbed extraterrestrial spy, which is to say, with great confidence and zero hesitation. She clicked it once, looked at it, put it back in her pen cup. Sit down, she said. Vorn sat down. He sat down on the floor, which was the closest available surface, because he had not been given a chair and his legs still needed a moment. This is not mentioned in any official Krethian intelligence report, because the official Krethian intelligence report, filed 6 weeks later, describes the encounter as agent maintained composure throughout initial contact scenario. The other humans in the office had slowly begun to move again, the way animals do after a predator passes, cautious, testing, not fully committed to the idea that normal was back. One of the younger ones, a person with bright orange sneakers whose name tag said Demi, had gotten very close and was staring at Vorn's secondary eye cluster with an expression that he had catalogued under human fascination response, subtype enthusiastic, non-threatening. Are you a real alien? Demi said. It was not quite a question. It was more of a statement offered up to the universe and hoping the universe would confirm or deny. Yes, Vorn said. Sick, said Demi. Mara had sat back down at her desk, turned to her monitor, and was typing something. Vorn watched the keystrokes and felt his intelligence training kick in despite everything. She was writing an email, subject line visible for 2.6 seconds. It said, FYI, there is an alien in the office. Who are you sending that to? Vorn asked. HR, she said without turning around. Your human resources department has a protocol for this. They have a protocol for everything. She turned to look at him over her shoulder. Last year, Kiku brought his pet snake in and HR sent an 8-page document within the hour. I imagine they will have thoughts. Ko-wormku, from 3 desks over, nodded with the particular energy of someone who still believed, deep down, that the snake incident had been handled disproportionately. Vorn processed this. His mission had been designed for maximum invisibility, a quiet 30-day observation rotation, collect data, return to the ship, submit the usual report about human infrastructure and behavioral patterns. Standard procedure. Clean, professional. Not once in the 22 pages of mission briefing had there been any scenario planning for, cloak is destroyed by a human in a yellow cardigan. You are now sitting on the floor of their workplace while their HR department is being notified. He attempted to access his emergency extraction beacon. It had been on the same belt housing as the cloaking device, the one Mara had kicked. The beacon was, to use a technical term, broken into 4 pieces. I need to contact my vessel, Vorn said. Okay, Mara said. I do not have a way to do that at present. She turned around fully now and looked at him with an expression he had catalogued under human assessment response measuring severity of problem. She glanced at the broken housing on his hip. She looked at the pen cup. She looked back at him. Did I do that? Yes. Another pause. Good, she said. Vorn had been in intelligence work long enough to recognize when he was dealing with someone who was not afraid of him. He had also been in intelligence work long enough to recognize when he had made a catastrophic mistake. He had made both of those assessments within the first 30 seconds. What he had not made, and what was becoming uncomfortably necessary, was a plan. The office was alive again now. People were talking in the low, urgent, fascinated whispers that humans used when something had happened, but they were not entirely sure how loudly they were allowed to react to it. Demi had gotten a chair and placed it directly in front of Vorn and was sitting on it backwards, arms crossed over the back, watching him with the devotion of someone attending a very interesting lecture. "What were you going to do with the pen?" Demi asked. "Document it," Vorn said. "You do not have pens where you come from?" "We do not write, we record. All information is stored and transmitted directly." Demi considered this. "So you have never held a pen." "I have held one now," Vorn said quietly. "What did it feel like?" Vorn looked at his manipulation field emitters, where the pen had briefly been. He thought about the weight of it, the strange simplicity of a tool that required no power source, no signal, no connection to any network. A small cylinder of ink that existed entirely on its own terms. "Honest," he said. Demi blinked, nodded slowly, the kind of nod that meant they would be thinking about that answer for a while. Mara's computer made a sound. She read something, typed a reply, read again. Then she picked up her double-shot oat latte with vanilla and hazelnut, and a normal amount of cinnamon, took a long sip, set it down, and turned her chair fully around to face the alien currently occupying her office floor. "HR says," she announced to the room, "and I am reading this directly, that they will need 48 hours to assemble a cross-departmental response team, that in the meantime the alien is to be treated with, quote, professional courtesy and dignity, end quote, and that someone should offer him coffee." A silence settled over the office. "Does he drink coffee?" Koku asked. Everyone looked at Vorn. "I do not know," Vorn said. "No one has ever offered me any." Mara stood up, walked to the small kitchen area at the back of the office, and came back 2 minutes later holding a paper cup. She held it out. He looked at it. He looked at her. "You are not afraid of me," he said. "Should I be? Most species in the known galaxy are." She shrugged. "You were stealing a pen." She had a point. He took the cup. The warmth of it traveled through his field emitters in a way that was not entirely unpleasant. He did not drink it, but he held it, and for a moment sitting on the floor of a human office building with a broken cloaking device and a shattered extraction beacon, surrounded by 47 humans who were probably all sending videos to their friends, Vorn Ultesh felt something his training manuals had absolutely no category for. Safe, which was, objectively, the most terrifying thing that had happened to him all day. And the day, as Mara Ose could have told him, with the casual certainty of someone who had worked in this office for 4 years, was still very, very young. Here is something the Krethian Empire had spent approximately 300 years getting very good at, watching humans from a distance. Here is something the Krethian Empire had spent 0 time preparing for, a human handing you a sticky note and asking you to write your name on it. Mara held out the small yellow square of adhesive paper and a pen, not the pink flower one. She had put that one away in her top drawer where it was apparently now safe from interstellar theft, but a plain black ballpoint. She held it out with the same energy someone uses when offering a form at a government counter, routine, unbothered, mildly expectant. Vorn stared at it. "For the visitor log," she said. "You have a visitor log. Everyone who comes into this building signs the visitor log." She tilted her head. "You came into this building. I was invisible. You are not invisible now." He could not argue with that. 47 humans plus 1 visiting alien, all present and accounted for, and the morning had not even reached 11 a.m. yet. Outside, through the large glass windows of Office Block 7, New Ottawa looked exactly as it always had. Grey sky, wet pavement, a pigeon doing something suspicious near the parking structure. The world did not appear to have received the memo that first contact, real, formal, undeniable, recorded on 6 separate phones first contact, had just happened on the 3rd floor of an administrative building over a flower pen. Vorn took the pen. He looked at it. He looked at the sticky note. "My designation in your written language would take approximately 11 lines, he said. "Use a nickname," Mara said. He thought about it. His secondary cognition units ran through 17 options in 003 seconds. He wrote, in letters that were slightly too large and pressed slightly too hard into the paper, the word VORN. Mara took the sticky note, looked at it, and stuck it on the edge of her monitor next to 3 other sticky notes that said things like "Call building maintenance again," and "Fernando needs water Friday," and one that just said "Y" in capital letters with no further context. Vorn felt that the last one was relatable. The morning progressed in the way that only truly strange mornings can, by refusing to behave like anything other than a completely ordinary morning. People made phone calls. Someone ate a sandwich at their desk at 10:30 a.m., which seemed early, but no one commented on it. A printer jammed and 3 separate humans visited it, stared at it, pressed the same button in the same way, and returned to their desks without solving anything. Vorn watched all of it. This was, technically, still his job. Observe, document, record. His data collectors were still functional even if his extraction equipment was not, and the amount of pure behavioral information he was accumulating was, professionally speaking, extraordinary. Up close, human behavior had a texture to it that long-distance observation could not capture. The way they moved between serious and absurd without any visible transition. The way Kweku could spend 4 minutes complaining about a broken printer and then 40 seconds later be laughing so hard at something on his phone that his chair rolled back 2 feet. Demi had positioned their chair next to Vorn and had taken on the unofficial role of what Vorn could only classify as orientation guide, except that Demi had no actual knowledge of what an alien intelligence officer might need to know, and was therefore explaining things based entirely on personal interest. "That is the snack drawer," Demi said, pointing. "Everyone knows about it, no one talks about it officially. It is community property." "Who funds the snack drawer?" Vorn asked. "Unclear. It just refills. That is not how supply chains work." "No," Demi agreed. "But here we are." Vorn wrote this down. His report was going to be the most confusing document in Krethian intelligence history. At 11:15 a.m., 3 things happened in rapid succession. The first was that Mara received a phone call and said yes. Then "I see," then "how many?" Then just "okay," in the tone of someone whose day had shifted from complicated to fully committed to being a problem. The second was that a black vehicle pulled up in front of the building, followed by 2 more black vehicles, because apparently the government had a protocol for this after all, and it involved multiple vehicles. The third was that Mara hung up, turned to Vorn and said, "They are sending people." "Government people," Vorn said. "Government people," she confirmed. "How long do we have?" She looked out the window. The vehicles were already parking. Less time than would be ideal. Vorn processed the situation. Government contact was, officially, the next step in any first contact scenario. He knew the protocols from the Krethian side. Formalities, assessments, diplomatic channels, 17 layers of bureaucratic verification before anything of substance could be discussed. It would take weeks, months, possibly. He would be taken somewhere controlled, monitored, questioned, evaluated. His mission data would be confiscated. He would be handed to people who had prepared speeches. He looked at Mara, who had turned back to her computer and was very deliberately saving every open document. "You are backing up your files," he said. "I always back up my files when something is about to happen," she said. "Why?" "Because things happen to my files." She glanced at him. "Do you have anything you want to do before they get here?" He thought about that. Really thought about it. Not with his intelligence training or his mission protocols or his 17 options in 0.003 seconds cognition units, but with whatever part of him had felt safe 45 minutes ago, sitting on a floor holding a paper cup of coffee he had never tasted. "I want to write something down," he said. Mara opened her top drawer. She took out the pink flower pen. She placed it on the desk in front of him. "There," she said. He looked at the pen. He looked at her. He looked at the blank notepad beside her keyboard that she had not offered but had placed within reach. "Why?" he said. "Because you came a very long way, and you did not get to finish what you came to do," she said. "And because in about 4 minutes this room is going to be full of people who are going to make this very complicated and very official, and you are not going to get another quiet moment for a while." Outside, doors were opening, voices carrying up from the street. The sound of lanyards and briefcases, and the specific footsteps of people who believed they were the most important people in any given room. Vorn picked up the pink flower pen. He had held it before, for exactly 2.4 seconds, floating in his manipulation field, and he had thought it felt honest. Holding it now, physically, in the external manipulation digits that his species used for close contact tasks, he understood better what he had meant. There was no transmission protocol, no signal delay, no compression of data into formats optimized for storage. The pen was just a pen. The paper was just paper. Whatever he put on it would exist in exactly the form he chose. Immediate, unprocessed, and entirely his. He wrote. Not in Krethian notation. Not in any form his handlers back on the fleet would understand or expect. He wrote in human letters, the ones he had learned from 3 rotations of quiet observation, the ones he had watched Mara use every morning for her personal to-do lists. He wrote, "I came to document what you have built. I was not expecting to find that the most significant thing you have built is that you still write things down." He put the pen on the desk. He pushed the notepad toward Mara. She read it again, the second time being the way humans process something they want to make sure they have understood correctly. Then she tore the page off the notepad, folded it twice, and put it in her cardigan pocket. "Okay," she said. The elevator dinged. They came in the way government representatives always come in, with purpose, with identification cards, with at least one person wearing an earpiece, and with the collective energy of a group that had been waiting for this exact moment and was deeply committed to handling it correctly. There were 6 of them. They spread out into the room with practiced efficiency, and one of them, a woman with short grey hair and a very serious expression, walked directly toward Vorn with the kind of eye contact that communicates, "I have prepared for this. I am Director Petra Holt," she said. "Department of Interplanetary Affairs, Canadian Federal Government. We have been expecting contact from your species, and we want to ensure that this situation is handled with full respect and appropriate protocol." Vorn looked at her. He looked at Mara, who was drinking her oat latte, and had returned to looking at her emails with the expression of someone who had already filed the correct paperwork. He looked back at Director Holt. "Your HR department responded faster," he said. Director Holt blinked. "I beg your pardon." When Mara notified her Human Resources Division, the response came in 14 minutes and included specific hospitality guidance. He paused. "You took 43 minutes and have not yet offered me anything." Demi, from behind Director Holt, made a sound that was technically a cough. Director Holt recovered with the grace of someone who had trained for difficult conversations. "We would like to transfer you to a secure facility where we can ensure your safety and begin formal discussions." "I am comfortable here," Vorn said. "The facility has significantly better resources." "I have coffee," Vorn said. He had not drunk the coffee, but he still had the cup, and he held it up slightly for emphasis. "I have a visitor log entry. I have been provided orientation by Demi, who has explained the snack drawer system, which I believe is the most honest model of cooperative resource distribution I have encountered in 4 planetary assessments." The room was very quiet. Demi looked like they were going to put this on their resume. Director Holt turned to Mara. "Is he always like this?" "I have known him for 51 minutes, Mara said. "But yes, apparently, what followed was not the formal first contact protocol that 300 years of Krethian intelligence work had predicted, or the sweeping governmental ceremony that the Department of Interplanetary Affairs had planned, or the careful diplomatic exchange that 17 academic papers had theorized about in peer-reviewed journals. What followed was a negotiation conducted in a mid-sized government office on a grey Tuesday morning, with a printer that still was not working, a snack drawer of mysterious origin, and a cactus named Fernando, who witnessed the entire thing without weighing in. Vorn agreed to accompany Director Holt's team for formal processing, because he was not without reason, and because his extraction beacon needed to be repaired, and the Krethian vessel needed to be contacted before the fleet did something unfortunate, based on his signal going dark. But he had 2 conditions. The first was that his mission data be returned to him intact, uncensored, and unedited, because the data was his and because he had spent 3 rotations collecting it, and because frankly some of it was fascinating in ways that neither government would fully appreciate. The second condition he delivered while looking at Mara, who had gone back to her to-do list. He asked that Mara Osei be included in any formal dialogue process, in whatever capacity she was willing to take on, because she had been the first human to treat him like something other than a problem to be managed, and because in his professional assessment, that made her the single most valuable contact the Krethian Empire had encountered in any planetary survey to date. Director Holt said she would take it under advisement. Mara said, without looking up from her notepad, that she would need to check her calendar. As they walked him toward the elevator, Vorn looked back once. Fernando the cactus sat beside the monitor. The sticky note with Vorn written in oversized letters was still stuck to the edge of the screen. The pink flower pen was back in the cup. The city outside the window was exactly as grey and wet and ordinary as it had been 2 hours ago, pigeons and parking structures and all, and somewhere in its ordinary morning, something had shifted, quietly, without ceremony, the way important things usually do. Not because a government had prepared for it, not because a protocol had been followed, but because a woman in a yellow cardigan had turned around at exactly the right moment, kicked the right piece of equipment, and then rather than screaming, handed an alien a sticky note and told him to write his name down. Vorn rode the elevator down in silence. One of the agents with an earpiece kept glancing at him sideways. Vorn did not acknowledge this. He was thinking about the note in Mara's pocket. He was thinking about what it meant that his most significant field observation in 14 years of service was not a weapons system or a power infrastructure or a governmental structure. It was that humans still wrote things by hand. Because some things, they had apparently decided, were worth slowing down for. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened. New Ottawa continued, exactly as before, entirely unaware that the morning had just changed everything, in the best, most quietly human way possible.